The rain was coming down hard that Tuesday afternoon, the kind of rain that makes everything look gray and sad. Claire sat by the window of the fancy cafe downtown, watching the drops race each other down the glass. She was 18 today. 18 years old, and she was celebrating her birthday completely alone. Her phone buzzed. Another text from her father's assistant. Mr. Richardson sends his warmest wishes. He's sorry he couldn't be there. The Tokyo meetings ran late. Your gift should arrive by courier within the hour. Claire didn't bother responding. She'd heard it all before. Different city, same excuse. Last year it was London. The year before that, Dubai. Her father was always somewhere else, always closing some important deal, always making another $1 million. And always sending gifts instead of showing up. She looked down at her wrist. This morning's delivery had been a diamond bracelet. Real diamonds, the assistant had texted proudly. Cost more than most people make in a year. Claire had put it on because, well, what else was she supposed to do with it? But it felt heavy and cold, like wearing someone else's apology. The cafe was packed with people. A group of college students huddled around a laptop in one corner, probably cramming for exams. An older couple shared a slice of cheesecake, the woman laughing at something her husband said. At the table beside Claire, two friends were deep in conversation, their hands moving as fast as their mouths while they caught up on gossip. Claire watched them all, feeling like she was looking through that rain-streaked window, even though she was right there in the room. She'd felt this way for 11 years now, ever since the meningitis. That's what the doctors had called it. Bacterial meningitis. She'd been 7 years old, complaining of a headache one day, and by the end of the week, everything had changed forever. The fever had been so high, the doctors later told her father, that they weren't sure she'd make it. But she did make it. She survived. Except the Claire who woke up in that hospital bed wasn't quite the same Claire who'd gone to sleep. The infection had stolen her hearing completely, and with her hearing gone, her voice followed. She could still technically speak, but when you can't hear yourself or anyone else, talking becomes this strange, difficult thing. So she'd stopped trying. Her father had handled it the only way he knew how. He threw money at the problem. The best doctors in the country examined her. Specialists flew in from Europe. She got hearing aids that cost as much as a car, even though they barely helped. Private schools with special programs. A full-time interpreter who followed her everywhere like a shadow. Mrs. Chen was her name. Nice woman, probably in her 50s. She'd been with Claire for 8 years now, translating the world for her, turning signs into words and words into signs. But today was Mrs. Chen's day off. Her daughter was getting married this weekend, and she needed time to help with the preparations. Claire had insisted she take the day. No point in both of them being stuck working on a Tuesday afternoon. So here Claire was, alone, on her birthday, in a crowded cafe. She pulled out her phone and opened the Notes app. This was how she ordered now when Mrs. Chen wasn't around. Type out what she wanted, turn the screen to show the waiter, and wait. It worked fine. Everything worked fine. That was the thing about money. It could make everything work fine. It just couldn't make anything feel right. Claire typed, "Can I have a slice of chocolate cake, please? And a cappuccino?" The waiter appeared, young guy with tired eyes and a kind smile. He read her screen and nodded, giving her a thumbs up. He didn't ask questions. He didn't make it weird. She appreciated that. Some people got all awkward when they realized she couldn't hear them. They'd start talking really slowly, exaggerating their mouth movements like that would somehow help. Or they'd talk really loud as if volume was the problem. This waiter just treated her like any other customer. The cake arrived a few minutes later. Single slice. Chocolate with chocolate frosting sitting on a small white plate. No candle, no singing, no fuss, just cake. Claire picked up her fork and pressed it into the soft frosting. 18 years old. Adults were supposed to feel grown up at 18, weren't they? Ready to take on the world. Claire just felt tired. She thought about her father, probably in some conference room right now, shaking hands with businessmen in expensive suits. Michael Richardson. Tech mogul, the magazines called him. Visionary entrepreneur. Self-made millionaire.
Father of the Year?
That article hadn't been written yet. It wasn't that he didn't care. Claire knew he cared. He just didn't know how to show it in any way that mattered. After the meningitis, he'd become obsessed with fixing her. That's how he saw it. His daughter was broken and he needed to fix her. Never mind that Claire didn't feel broken. Just different. She remembered years ago asking him to learn sign language. Really learn it, not just the basic alphabet and a few simple phrases. His response had been to hire Mrs. Chen. Problem solved, right? Why should he spend hours in classes learning a new language when he could just pay someone who already knew it? Claire took a bite of the cake. It was good. Probably cost $20 for this single slice. Everything in this cafe cost too much. But it was quiet here. Well, quiet to everyone else. To Claire, everywhere was quiet. But here, people left her alone. Nobody tried to strike up conversations. Nobody expected anything from her. Her phone buzzed again. She glanced at it. A social media notification. Someone from her old private school had posted birthday wishes on her wall. Happy birthday, Claire. Hope you have an amazing day. With about 15 exclamation marks and a string of balloon emojis. They probably meant well. They all meant well. But Claire had learned that most people's kindness came with an expiration date. They'd be nice for a while, try to include her, make an effort to communicate. But it was work. Being friends with Claire took effort. You had to text instead of call. You had to face her when you talked so she could read your lips. You had to be patient when she pulled out her phone to type responses. Most people got tired of the effort eventually. Not all at once, just gradually. The invitations would slow down. The texts would take longer to come. And then one day, you'd realize you were eating birthday cake alone in a cafe and you couldn't quite remember when you'd last had a real conversation with someone who wasn't paid to be there. Claire set down her fork. The cake was half eaten, but she wasn't really hungry anyway. Through the window, the rain kept falling. People rushed past with umbrellas, hurrying to get wherever they needed to be. Everyone had somewhere to go, someone to see. She picked up her cappuccino. The foam had a little heart design on top. The barista had made it pretty, even though it was just a to-go order for a girl sitting alone. Small kindnesses. They were something. Claire closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, something caught her attention. Movement. The kind of movement she'd trained herself to notice over the years. At a table across the cafe near the counter, someone was signing. Actually signing. American Sign Language. Claire sat up straighter, her heart beating a little faster. She wasn't the only one. There was someone else here who signed. Her eyes found the source. A little girl, couldn't be more than 6 or 7. Her small hands moving in quick animated gestures. She was signing to a man, probably her father, who was watching her with this look of intense concentration on his face. But something was off. The man's hands were moving too, trying to sign back, but his gestures were slow and clumsy. He was getting the signs wrong. Claire could tell even from across the room. The little girl didn't seem to mind, though. She just kept signing, patient and encouraging, occasionally correcting him with gentle movements. Claire found herself staring. She knew it was rude, but she couldn't help it. It had been so long since she'd seen someone else signing in public. Most of her life existed in 2 separate worlds. The hearing world, where she was always the odd one out, and the deaf community events Mrs. Chen sometimes took her to, where everyone signed but Claire still felt like an outsider because she'd come to it so late. But here was this little girl, signing away like it was the most natural thing in the world. And here was this man, this father, struggling through signs with such obvious determination. He wasn't giving up, even though it was clearly hard for him. Claire felt something shift in her chest. Something that had been tight for a very long time loosened just a little bit. She wasn't sure what it was. Hope, maybe? Or just the simple relief of seeing someone else who understood, even from across a crowded cafe. She took another sip of her cappuccino and kept watching, not quite ready to look away from this unexpected moment of connection, even if they never spoke, even if they never noticed her. Just knowing they were there in the same room, speaking the same language, made the cafe feel a little less lonely. Outside, the rain continued to fall. But inside, something had changed. Claire's 18th birthday wasn't quite so empty anymore. Claire couldn't stop watching them. The little girl's hands moved with such confidence, telling some story that had her practically bouncing in her seat. Her father leaned forward, squinting slightly as he tried to follow along, his own hands fumbling through responses that were probably supposed to be questions. Then it happened. The little girl turned her head and looked directly at Claire. Their eyes met across the cafe and the girl's face lit up like someone had turned on a light switch. She started waving frantically, her whole arm moving, not just her hand. The kind of wave that said, "I see you," You're like me. Claire felt her cheeks flush. She'd been caught staring. But before she could look away or pretend she'd been focused on something else, the little girl was already out of her seat. Her father reached out, probably trying to stop her, but she was too quick. She weaved between tables, nearly bumping into a waiter carrying a tray of drinks, and landed right in front of Claire's table. Her hands started moving immediately. Hi, you sign. I saw you watching. Do you sign? Of course you sign, I can tell. Nobody watches signing like that unless they sign too. Claire blinked, surprised by the sudden rush of words. Well, signs. She nodded slowly. Then her hands came up almost automatically. Yes, I sign. The girl's smile got even bigger. I'm Sophie. I'm 6. Well, 6 3/4. That's basically 7. Daddy says I can't round up yet, but I think 3/4 is close enough, don't you? Despite everything, despite the sadness that had been sitting heavy in her chest all day, Claire felt the corners of her mouth turn up. This kid had energy. Her hands moved to respond. I'm Claire. And yes, 3/4 is definitely close enough. Is that your birthday cake? Sophie signed, pointing at the half-eaten slice. It's got chocolate. I love chocolate. Daddy says I can have dessert after dinner, but that's so far away. Did you have lunch already? Is this your lunch? Cake for lunch sounds amazing. Claire was trying to keep up with the rapid-fire signing when Sophie's father appeared, slightly out of breath. He looked embarrassed, his hands coming up in what was clearly meant to be an apology, though his signing was so hesitant that Claire had to piece together what he meant. Sorry, my daughter. She gets excited when she sees other people who sign. His name was Daniel, Claire learned. He spoke while he signed, his words matching his hand movements, probably a habit from when he was first learning. Most hearing people did that. Sophie immediately jumped in, her small hands correcting her father's grammar, showing him the right way to structure the sentence. It was sweet, watching them. This big man with carpenter's hands, rough and calloused, trying so carefully to form each sign correctly, and this tiny girl, patient beyond her years, teaching her father the language that was as natural to her as breathing. Claire pulled out her phone and typed, It's okay. I don't mind. She turned the screen to show Daniel, who relaxed a little, but Sophie was already tugging on Claire's sleeve, her hands moving again. Are you here alone? Why are you alone? Is it really your birthday? You shouldn't be alone on your birthday. That's sad. Daddy, she's alone on her birthday. That's not right. Daniel read Sophie's signs and his expression changed. The embarrassment faded, replaced by something softer. Concern, maybe? He looked at Claire, really looked at her, and then his hands moved carefully. Today? Your birthday? Claire nodded. She didn't trust herself to sign more than that. Something about this little girl's directness, her complete lack of filter, was making Claire's throat tight. When was the last time someone had said it wasn't right for her to be alone? When was the last time anyone had noticed? Sophie didn't wait for permission. She just grabbed an empty chair from a nearby table and dragged it over, the legs scraping against the floor. She plopped down next to Claire like they'd been friends forever. Okay, we'll have birthday cake together then. Daddy can share his coffee. He always orders too much anyway. Daniel looked torn. Claire could see it on his face. He didn't want to intrude, but he also couldn't drag his daughter away. Not when Sophie had already decided they were staying. He signed slowly. You sure? We don't want to bother you. And here's where Claire surprised herself. Instead of typing a polite decline, instead of insisting she was fine alone, her hands came up. Please stay if you want to. Sophie cheered, actually cheered, her hands clapping together before she signed. See, Daddy? She wants us to stay. Can we get more cake? Please, it's a birthday. You have to have cake at birthdays. That's the rule. Daniel gave in with a sigh that was half exasperation, half affection. He caught a waiter's attention and somehow managed to order 2 more slices of cake and another coffee, using a combination of pointing at the menu and very basic signs. The waiter looked confused but nodded. While they waited, Sophie bombarded Claire with questions. How old are you? Do you go to school? Do you have a dog? I want a dog, but Daddy says our apartment is too small. Do you live in a big house? Is that cake good? It looks good. What's your favorite color? Mine's purple. Like really purple. Not light purple. Dark purple like grapes. Claire found herself answering, her hands moving faster than they had in months. I'm 18. No school right now, no dog. I live with my father. Yes, the cake is good. And I like blue. 18 is so old, Sophie signed. You can drive and everything. Do you have a car? What kind? Can you drive me and Daddy sometime? His truck smells like wood. He's a carpenter. He makes furniture. Really nice furniture. Our kitchen table wobbles, though. I told him, but he says it gives it character. Daniel's face went red and he signed, "Table doesn't wobble," but he was fighting a smile. The cake arrived. 3 slices now sat on Claire's table, turning her solo birthday into something that looked almost like a party. Sophie insisted that they needed to sing happy birthday, and her hands moved through the signs while she hummed, since she couldn't hear the tune anyway. Daniel joined in, his signs clumsy but earnest. Claire felt something break inside her chest. Not break like breaking apart, break like breaking open. When was the last time someone had sung happy birthday to her? Really sung it, not just texted the words or had it done by paid staff who were just being professional? A tear rolled down her cheek before she could stop it. Sophie noticed immediately.
Why are you crying?
Are you sad? Don't be sad. It's your birthday. Birthdays are happy. Claire shook her head, wiping her eyes quickly. Her hands signed, "Not sad, happy. These are happy tears." Sophie looked skeptical. Happy tears are weird. But okay, they ate cake together. Sophie talked non-stop between bites, her hands always moving, telling Claire about her dance class, where she was the only deaf kid but the teacher was learning signs, her pet hamster, named Butterscotch because he was yellow, and her daddy's cooking, terrible apparently, lots of burnt things. Daniel interjected occasionally with his slow, careful signs. Not that bad at cooking, and only burnt dinner twice this week, and Sophie let her eat. But Claire didn't want Sophie to stop talking. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she was part of a conversation, really part of it. Not struggling to read lips or waiting for Mrs. Chen to translate. Not typing on her phone while others talked around her. Just sitting here signing, being understood completely. She learned that Daniel's wife had died 2 years ago. Cancer. Sophie had only been 4. And it was after his wife died that Daniel discovered Sophie was deaf. She'd been so young, and in the chaos of illness and grief no one had realized. By the time they figured it out, Sophie was already behind in language development. Daniel had blamed himself, signed that he should have noticed sooner. So he'd thrown himself into learning sign language, took classes 3 times a week, watched videos every night, practiced with Sophie constantly. He wasn't fluent yet, probably wouldn't be for years, but he was trying. Really genuinely trying. Daddy's getting better, Sophie signed proudly. He used to sign grandmother when he meant banana. Very confusing, Claire laughed. Actually laughed. The sound came out weird, the way it always did when she couldn't hear herself, but she didn't care. Sophie thought it was great and tried to make her laugh again with more stories about Daniel's signing mistakes. They sat there for almost an hour. The cafe got more crowded as the afternoon wore on, people coming in to escape the rain. But at their little table, Claire felt like she was in a bubble of warmth and connection. Finally, Daniel checked his watch and signed apologetically. "We should go. Sophie has homework." "I don't have that much homework," Sophie protested. "Just reading and math." "That's nothing." "Still homework," Daniel signed firmly. Sophie turned to Claire, her expression serious. "Can we see you again, please? I don't have many friends who sign. Daddy tries, but he's not as fun to talk to." Daniel looked mock offended, but he was watching Claire carefully, probably worried about putting her on the spot. Claire didn't hesitate. She pulled out her phone and opened a new contact. She typed her number and turned the screen to show Daniel. He looked surprised but pleased. He pulled out his own phone, an older model with a cracked screen, and saved her information. "Text me," Claire typed. "Anytime." The text came 3 days later. Claire was in her room, supposedly studying for her online college courses, but mostly staring at her computer screen without seeing it. Her phone lit up with a message from an unknown number. "Hi, Claire. This is Daniel. Sophie won't stop asking about you. Would you want to meet up again?" No pressure. She'd understand if you're busy. Claire read it 3 times. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of her was scared. What if meeting them again wasn't as good as the first time? What if it had just been a fluke that perfect afternoon? What if she'd built it up in her head to be more than it was? But then she remembered Sophie's hug, Daniel's patient signing, the feeling of being included, really included in something. She typed back, "I'd love to." "When?" The response came quickly. Sophie has dance class Saturday morning. Want to come watch? Fair warning, it's loud. Well, probably loud. And chaotic, Claire smiled. Sounds perfect. Saturday morning found her standing outside a community center on the edge of town, somewhere she'd never been before. The building was old, paint peeling a bit around the windows, but clean. Kids were everywhere, being dropped off by parents, running around the parking lot, full of that weekend energy. She spotted Daniel's truck, the one Sophie had mentioned. It was old, probably 15 years at least, with paint-splattered sides and tools visible through the back window. Nothing like the sleek black cars her father's drivers used. Claire! Sophie came running, still in regular clothes but carrying a bag with her dance outfit. She crashed into Claire with another one of those surprise hugs. You came! I told Daddy you'd come, but he said maybe you'd be busy, but I knew you'd come. Daniel followed at a more reasonable pace, looking slightly embarrassed by his daughter's enthusiasm. He signed a greeting more smoothly than last time. He'd been practicing. Come on, come on! Sophie grabbed Claire's hand and pulled her toward the entrance. You have to meet Miss Kelly, she's my teacher. She's learning signs too. She's not as good as Daddy yet, but she tries really hard. The dance studio was on the second floor. They climbed stairs covered in scuff marks from thousands of little feet. Claire could feel the vibrations before they even reached the door. Bass from music, footsteps, the thud of bodies moving. To everyone else, it was probably loud. To Claire, it was just vibrations. But she'd learned to read those vibrations, to understand the rhythm of them. The studio was full of little girls in leotards and tights, all around Sophie's age. They were stretching, chatting, practicing moves. A woman in her 30s stood at the front, wearing dance clothes and a headset microphone. She had a tablet propped up nearby, probably with the music controls. Sophie ran to her, signing as she went. Miss Kelly. Miss Kelly! This is my friend Claire. She signs too. She's really good at it. Can she watch class? Miss Kelly's face brightened. She signed back slowly and carefully with some mistakes. Hi Claire, welcome, please sit. She gestured to some folding chairs along the wall where a few other parents had already gathered. Daniel sat next to Claire, pulling out his phone. I usually work during her class, he signed. Answer emails, make calls with the video relay service. But I can stay if you want company. Claire signed back. Work. I'm fine. She watched as Miss Kelly started the class. The teacher stood where all the girls could see her, her movements exaggerated and clear. She'd point to her tablet when the music changed, using visual cues to help Sophie know when to switch moves. Some of the other girls had clearly been taught a few basic signs, because they'd turn and sign encouragement to Sophie or questions about the routine. Sophie was good, not professional dancer good, but good for a 6-year-old with pure joy. She threw herself into every movement, her concentration fierce when learning new steps, her smile huge when she got something right. During a water break, some of the other girls crowded around Sophie, and Claire watched them communicate. It was messy, a combination of gestures, exaggerated mouthing of words, and the few signs they knew. But they were trying, and Sophie was patient, showing them signs, laughing with them. She's popular, Claire signed to Daniel. He looked up from his phone, watched his daughter for a moment, and signed back. Kids are better at this than adults. They don't overthink it. They just want to talk to their friends, so they figure it out. Claire thought about that. How many adults in her life had given up because it was too hard? But these 6-year-olds, they didn't see hard. They just saw their friend Sophie and found ways to communicate. After class, Sophie ran over, sweaty and glowing. Did you see? Did you see my pirouette? I only wobbled a little bit. It was great, Claire signed. You're really good, Sophie beamed. Then, with that lack of filter that kids have, she signed. Want to come to our house? Daddy's making lunch. Well, trying to make lunch. It'll probably be sandwiches. He burns everything else. Daniel's ears turned red. I don't burn everything. You burned soup last week, Sophie signed matter-of-factly. I didn't know soup could burn, but you did it, Claire laughed. I'd love to come. Their apartment was small, second floor of an old building, the kind with narrow hallways and creaky floors. But when Daniel unlocked the door and they stepped inside, Claire was surprised by how warm it felt. The furniture was all handmade, she realized. That's what Daniel did. The coffee table had these beautiful carved legs. The bookshelf looked like something from a fancy store, but she could tell it had been made with love, not mass-produced. Even the kitchen table, the one Sophie claimed, wobbled. was gorgeous, made from dark wood with a smooth, polished surface. "You made all this?" Claire signed, looking around. Daniel nodded, looking pleased but embarrassed. "It's what I do. Custom furniture. Some restoration work. Whatever people need." The apartment was cluttered but clean. Sophie's drawings covered the fridge. Books were everywhere. Most of them children's books, but some about carpentry, about sign language, about raising deaf kids. There was a small TV, a couch that had seen better days, and photos on every available surface. Claire found herself drawn to the photos. Daniel and Sophie at various ages, and a woman, beautiful with kind eyes, who had to be Daniel's wife, Sophie's mother. She was in about half the photos, and in every one she was smiling. "That's Mommy," Sophie signed, appearing next to Claire. "She was pretty, right? I don't remember her very much. Just feelings, like I remember feeling safe. And warm, is that weird?" Claire's throat felt tight. She signed, "That's not weird at all." Lunch was indeed sandwiches, but good sandwiches. Fresh bread, real turkey, vegetables that were actually crisp. Daniel moved around the small kitchen with practiced efficiency, and Sophie set the table, arranging the napkins just so. They ate at the kitchen table that didn't wobble, despite Sophie's claims. And for the first time in years, Claire felt like she was part of a family meal. Not a formal dinner with staff serving courses. Not eating alone in her room. Just 3 people sitting together sharing food and conversation. Sophie told jokes between bites, most of them terrible. Why did the cookie go to the doctor? "Because it felt crumbly." Her hands moved with each punchline, her face exaggerated for comedic effect. Daniel asked about Claire's life, his signing getting smoother as he relaxed. He didn't pry, didn't ask uncomfortable questions about money or why she'd been alone on her birthday. Just simple things. What did she like to read? Had she seen any good movies lately? Did she have hobbies? Claire found herself talking about things she hadn't thought about in years. She used to paint, she told them. Before the meningitis, she'd loved art class. But after, her father had hired private tutors who focused on practical skills. Painting wasn't practical. "That's dumb," Sophie signed bluntly. "Painting is fun. Fun is important. More important than practical." Daniel tried to look stern, but he was smiling. "Sophie, we talked about being polite." "I'm being honest," Sophie signed back. "Teacher says honesty is good." After lunch, Sophie dragged Claire to her room to show her what she called her treasure collection. It was a shoebox full of things that probably looked like junk to most people. Smooth rocks from the park, a feather, ticket stubs from a movie, a broken bracelet. But Sophie explained the story behind each item, why it was special, why she'd kept it. "This one's from the beach," she signed, holding up a small shell. "Daddy took me last summer. I found 17 shells, but this was the best one. See how it's shiny inside?" Claire held the shell carefully, admiring it. She'd been to beaches all over the world, private beaches, exclusive resorts, but she couldn't remember the last time she'd actually looked for shells. When they came back to the living room, Daniel was working on a piece of furniture, some kind of small cabinet. He had tools spread out, wood shavings on a drop cloth. He looked up, signing, "Sorry, I have a deadline on this piece. Do you mind?" Claire shook her head. She sat on the couch and watched him work. Claire was helping Sophie with her math homework when Mrs. Chen came to the apartment. Not Daniel and Sophie's apartment, her father's house. The mansion on the hill with more rooms than people and silence that felt heavy instead of peaceful. Mrs. Chen's face was worried. Her hands moved quickly. "Your father is coming home tomorrow. He wants to have dinner with you. 7 o'clock. He says it's important." Claire felt her stomach drop. Her father had been gone for 6 weeks this time. 6 perfect weeks where Claire had split her time between online classes and Sophie's world. 6 weeks of freedom, and now he was back. She nodded at Mrs. Chen and tried to focus back on Sophie's homework, but the numbers on the page might as well have been in a foreign language. Sophie noticed, of course. Kids always noticed. "What's wrong?" Sophie signed. "You look sad." "My father's coming home," Claire signed back. Sophie's face lit up. "That's good, right?" "You must miss him." Claire forced a smile. How could she explain to this 6-year-old that she didn't miss her father? That his absence felt more like relief than loss? That she'd been happier in the past month than she'd been in years? Daniel looked up from the cabinet he was refinishing in the corner. He'd been working while they did homework, the apartment filled with the smell of wood stain. His hands moved slowly. You should tell him about us. About Sophie. He'd want to know you've made friends. Claire wanted to believe that. She really did. But she knew her father. Knew how he saw the world, how he categorized people. Useful or not useful. Beneficial to business or not. And a struggling carpenter with a deaf daughter didn't fit into any category her father would approve of. That night, back in her own room, in a house so big her footsteps echoed, Claire lay awake. She could leave things as they were, not mention Daniel and Sophie, keep them separate from her father's world. But that felt like lying, like being ashamed, and she wasn't ashamed. She was proud to know them, proud they wanted to know her. The next evening, Claire changed clothes 3 times. Everything felt wrong, too casual, too formal. Finally, she settled on simple jeans and a sweater. If her father didn't like it, well, that would set the tone for the evening anyway. He was already in the dining room when she came down. Michael Richardson looking exactly as he always did. Expensive suit even at home. Perfectly styled hair. Phone in hand. Always on a call. Always working. He looked up when she entered and actually put the phone down. That was rare enough that Claire knew this dinner was serious. Mrs. Chen was already there, ready to translate. Her father had never learned more than the basics of sign language. Too busy, he always said. Too much else to learn for business, Claire, he said, and Mrs. Chen's hands translated. You look well, different. Have you changed something? Claire sat down. The dining table could seat 20 people. Tonight it was just the 2 of them, one at each end, an ocean of polished wood between them. Staff brought out the first course. Some kind of soup. Probably cost $50 a bowl. Her hands moved. I've made friends, Mrs. Chen translated aloud. Her father raised an eyebrow. Friends? That's wonderful. Through your online classes? No, I met them at a cafe. On my birthday. Something flickered across her father's face. Guilt, maybe? He'd missed her birthday. Again. Tell me about them. So she did. She told him about Sophie, about how this 6-year-old had bounced over to her table with no fear, no hesitation, about Daniel, working 2 jobs, learning sign language, trying his best, about feeling seen for the first time in years. Her father listened, his expression getting harder with each detail. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. Then his hands moved, the basic signs he knew. This Daniel. What does he do? He's a carpenter. He makes custom furniture. He's very talented. And his financial situation? Claire felt something cold settle in her stomach. What does that matter? Claire. Her father's voice was patient, the way you'd talk to a child who didn't understand. I need to be careful. You need to be careful. Your trust fund becomes accessible next year. You're going to be very wealthy. People will want to take advantage of that. Daniel doesn't know about the money. Claire signed sharply. Neither does Sophie. They just know me. For now, her father said. But they'll find out eventually. And then what? You don't think a carpenter struggling to make ends meet might see you as a solution to his problems?
He's not like that.
You've known him for 6 weeks, Claire. I've been in business for 30 years. I know how people are. Claire stood up, her chair scraping back. You don't know him. You don't know anything about him. Then help me understand. Her father's voice was calm, measured. How did you meet? Did he approach you? Did he ask about your family?
He didn't approach me.
His daughter came over. She's 6, Dad. She saw someone else who signed and got excited. That's all. It was innocent. 6 weeks ago was your birthday. You were at that cafe on Oak Street, weren't you? The expensive one. Her father pulled out his phone, started typing. I can find out who was there. I can run background checks. Stop. Claire's hand slashed through the air. Just stop. Why do you always do this? Why can't I just have something that's mine? Someone who likes me for me? Because I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control me. There's a difference. They stared at each other across that massive table. All the soup bowls in the world couldn't fill the space between them. Finally, her father sighed. I'll make you a deal. Let me meet them. This Daniel and his daughter. Let me have dinner with them, talk to them. If I'm wrong, if they're truly just friends who care about you, I'll apologize. And if you're not wrong, if you decide they're after my money, then you need to know that. For your own safety, Claire wanted to refuse, wanted to keep her 2 worlds separate. But part of her, a small part, wondered if her father might surprise her. Might see what she saw in Daniel and Sophie. Fine, she signed. But not here. Not in this house. Somewhere neutral. The cafe where you met? No, too public. Daniel's apartment. Her father looked like he wanted to argue but nodded. When? I'll ask them. The conversation with Daniel was harder than Claire expected. She went to his apartment the next day, waiting until Sophie was at school. He was working on a rocking chair, his hands covered in sawdust. When she explained what her father wanted, Daniel's face went carefully blank. He set down his tools and signed slowly. Your father thinks I'm after your money. It wasn't a question. Claire nodded miserably. I didn't know you had money. Well, I guessed you came from wealth. Your clothes, the way you talk about things. But I didn't care. Still don't care. I know. Does he think I'm using Sophie? That I'm making my daughter befriend you as some kind of scheme? He doesn't know you. He just knows how to protect his interests. I'm his interest. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he signed. If I say no, he won't let you see us anymore, will he? Claire couldn't lie. Probably not. Not until I'm 19 and my trust fund kicks in. Then I can do what I want. That's months away. I know. Sophie would be heartbroken. She talks about you constantly. Asks every morning if you're coming over. I'd be heartbroken too. Daniel picked up his tools again, turning them over in his hands. Okay, he can come. But Claire, I need you to know something. I'm not going to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not going to dress up or put on a show. This is who we are. This apartment, these clothes, sandwiches for dinner. If that's not good enough for him, then maybe he's right. Maybe our worlds are too different. They're not. Claire signed fiercely. Your world is real. Mine is just expensive. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday. Claire spent the days leading up to it feeling sick with anxiety. She helped Sophie clean the apartment, which mostly meant picking up toys and organizing books. Sophie thought Claire's father was coming for a fun dinner, like a play date but with parents. She didn't understand the real reason. Saturday arrived too quickly. Claire came early to help cook, but Daniel insisted on doing it himself. If he's going to judge us, he should see the real us, he signed. I'm making spaghetti. It's one of the 3 things I can cook without burning. Sophie wore her favorite dress, the purple one with flowers. She kept running to the window, watching for Claire's father's car. When it finally pulled up, a sleek black sedan that looked completely out of place on this street, Sophie bounced with excitement. He's here. He's here. Is he nice? Does he sign? Oh, he probably doesn't sign. That's okay. You can translate. The knock on the door made Claire's heart race. Daniel answered it, and there was her father, looking even more out of place than his car. Suit and tie, polished shoes, carrying a bottle of wine that probably cost more than a month of Daniel's rent. Mrs. Chen was with him. Of course, he'd need someone to translate. Michael Richardson looked around the small apartment, and Claire could see him cataloging everything. The handmade furniture, the worn couch, the water stain on the ceiling that the landlord kept promising to fix. Sophie saved the moment. She ran up to Claire's father and waved, smiling huge. Then her hands moved. Hi, I'm Sophie. You're Claire's daddy. She talks about you sometimes. Do you like spaghetti? We're having spaghetti. Daddy's making it. He's a good cook when he tries really hard. The morning after the dinner, Claire woke up to 17 text messages from her father. Not from his assistant. From him directly. That alone was unusual. The messages were all the same basic thing. We need to talk. She met him in his office, the one in the house that always smelled like leather and expensive wood polish. He was at his desk, but for once his computer was closed. His phone was face down. He was just sitting there waiting for her. Mrs. Chen stood by the door ready to translate, but Michael waved her away. Then he did something Claire hadn't seen in over a decade. He started signing, not well. His movements were stiff, uncertain, grammatically wrong. But he was trying. I was wrong, he signed slowly. About your friends. About you. Claire sat down, not sure if she could trust what she was seeing. Her father continued, his hands fumbling through the signs. That little girl, Sophie, she showed me her drawings. All of them had you in them. Every single one. She called you family. He paused, struggling to find the right signs. Finally, he just spoke, letting Claire read his lips while he also signed the words he knew. I've given you everything money can buy. But I never gave you what that carpenter gives his daughter every single day: time, attention, love. Dad, let me finish. His hands moved again, slower now. When your mother left when you were 3, I told myself I'd make it up to you. I'd work hard, make money, give you security. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that security isn't just about money. You needed a father. Instead, I gave you a trust fund. Claire felt tears starting. Her father never talked about her mother, never acknowledged that loss. Then you got sick, he continued, and I was terrified. The doctors said you might die. And when you didn't die, when you lived but the world changed for you, I thought I could fix it, throw enough money at it, hire enough people, and everything would be okay. But I never asked what you needed. I just decided what I thought was best. You did your best, Claire signed. My best wasn't good enough, her father signed back. I know that now. I saw it last night. The way you looked at Daniel and Sophie. You were happy. Really happy. When was the last time you looked that happy in this house? Claire didn't have an answer. Couldn't remember the last time. Her father stood up, walked around the desk. He pulled a chair next to Claire's instead of staying behind his massive desk. Close enough that his signing would be easier to see. I want to do better, he signed. I want to learn. Really learn. Not just basic signs. I want to have conversations with you. Real ones. Where you don't need Mrs. Chen. Where it's just us, father and daughter, talking. That would take time, Claire signed. A lot of time. I have time, her father said, speaking and signing together. I've wasted 11 years. I don't want to waste any more. Over the next few weeks, Michael Richardson did something nobody expected. He cleared his schedule. Moved meetings. Delegated projects. And 3 times a week, he sat in a classroom with 15 other people, learning American Sign Language. His teacher was a woman in her 40s, deaf since birth, who didn't care that he was a millionaire or a CEO. She cared that he was there to learn, and she didn't go easy on him. Claire went with him to the second class. Watched her father, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals, struggle through basic sentences. Watched him get corrections from college students half his age. Watched him practice the same sign over and over until he got it right. After class, they went to get coffee. Not at the expensive cafe where Claire had met Daniel and Sophie. At a regular coffee shop, the kind with mismatched mugs and local art on the walls. I'm terrible at this, her father signed, his movements still clumsy but improving. How did Daniel learn so fast? He practiced every day with Sophie, Claire signed. Constant immersion. Her father was quiet for a moment. Then, would you practice with me? Every day? Like Daniel and Sophie? Claire felt something warm spread through her chest. Yes, so they did. Every morning before her father went to work, they had breakfast together. No phones, no Mrs. Chen, just them signing. At first, the conversations were simple. How did you sleep? What are your plans today? The coffee is good, but gradually they got deeper. Her father asked about her online classes, about what she wanted to study. She'd never had these conversations before. She'd just enrolled in whatever program her father's assistant had suggested. I want to study education, she signed one morning. Special education. I want to help deaf kids and their families. Her father looked surprised, then thoughtful. Like what Daniel does for Sophie? Like what you're trying to do for me, Claire signed. Better late than never, right? He smiled, a real smile, not the professional one he used in business meetings. Better late than never. The 4 of them started having regular dinners. Sometimes at Daniel's apartment, sometimes at restaurants, once at the mansion, though that had been awkward for everyone. Sophie had spent the whole evening running through the huge house, amazed that people actually lived in places that big. It's like a castle, she'd signed. Are you a princess? You should be a princess. Can I live here too? Daniel had been uncomfortable in the mansion even though he tried to hide it. Too much space, too much wealth. It made him aware of the differences between his world and Claire's. But at his apartment, around his handmade table, things were easier. Michael Richardson would sit with a beer, which Sophie thought was hilarious. Daddy, Claire's daddy drinks the same beer as you. And they'd eat Daniel's cooking and talk. Michael's signing improved rapidly. He had the same intensity he brought to business, throwing himself into learning with complete focus. Within 3 months, he could hold conversations. Within 6 months, he was almost fluent. You're a show-off, Daniel signed one evening, grinning. I've been learning for 3 years and you're catching up. I have an excellent motivation, Michael signed back, looking at Claire. Sophie had adopted Michael as an honorary grandfather. She showed him her ballet moves, gave him drawings, asked him endless questions about his work. And Michael, who had spent years being too busy for his own daughter, made time for this little girl. One Saturday, Michael showed up at Daniel's apartment with news. I bought a building, he signed. Downtown, near the good schools. It needs renovation. Daniel looked confused. Okay, I want you to do the renovation. All the woodwork, all the custom furniture. But there's a condition. Here it comes, Daniel signed, but he was smiling. Half the building will be apartments, affordable housing for families. The other half will be a community center, sign language classes, support groups for parents of deaf kids, resources. Claire stared at her father.
Really?
Really, he signed. Daniel will manage the project, fair pay, and one of those apartments is yours if you want it. Daniel's hands moved slowly. I can't accept charity. It's not charity, Michael signed. It's a job. A real one. I need someone who understands what families like yours need. Someone who's lived it. That's you. What about Sophie's school? Her dance class? The community center will have a dance studio. And the elementary school 3 blocks away has an excellent program for deaf students. I checked. Daniel looked at Claire. Then at Sophie, who was bouncing with excitement even though she didn't fully understand what was happening. Then back at Michael. Why? He signed. Why would you do this? Michael's hands moved carefully. Because you gave my daughter something I couldn't. A sense of belonging. This is me trying to give something back. And maybe, if I'm honest, trying to make up for lost time. The building took 8 months to renovate. Daniel worked alongside a crew, but he was in charge of all the custom details. The banisters, the built-in shelves, the community room tables, everything that made it special. Claire enrolled in university. Real university, not just online classes. A program for deaf education. She'd have to work hard, but for the first time she was studying something she actually cared about. Sophie started at the new school. Within weeks she had friends. Real friends. Kids who signed, kids who didn't. All of them just kids being kids. She still took ballet at the community center, where Miss Kelly now taught full-time and Michael kept learning. Not just sign language, though he'd become fluent. He learned to listen, to really see his daughter, to understand that fixing problems wasn't the same as understanding people. The grand opening of the community center was on a Saturday in spring. The whole building was finished. Families were moving into the apartments. The center was ready to start offering classes and support groups. Claire stood in the main hall, looking around at everything her father and Daniel had built. Sophie ran past, chasing some new friend, both of them laughing silently. Daniel was talking to a group of parents, signing enthusiastically about some program. Mrs. Chen was there too, not as Claire's translator anymore, but as a volunteer teacher. Her father found her signing easily now. What are you thinking? Claire signed back, her hands moving with confidence. I'm thinking about my 18th birthday. How lonely I was. How I thought my life was going to be like that forever. And now,